It's afternoons on Rhema, and once again catching up with TJ Grant from World Vision. He is the International Partnerships Director, and it has been a busy old time for you, TJ. So thank you for making time in your calendar and joining us today.
Kia ora, Dai. It's always a pleasure to see you, and best wishes to Tom, of course, and the rest of the team at Rhema, and of course all of your listeners as we head into Christmas. It's an exciting time, and it's definitely been a busy time for me and for World Vision.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because it has been a really busy time. And I hear that you've just recently returned from a number of overseas trips. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I would love to. It's been a really interesting season. I had about almost a month of travel across lots of different areas from, remote Solomon Islands to bustling cities like Dhaka in Bangladesh and Bangkok in Thailand to one of the biggest refugee camps in the world, Cox's Bazar near the Myanmar border, where there's still over 1 million Rohingya refugees. And it puts in perspective, even as we look to forward towards Christmas, some of the realities, some of the challenges that are happening in this world. I mean, if we start heavy, and I promise to finish light and positive, but just to frame things a bit for you, Di, it has been a really challenging year. People will have heard of obviously the crisis that continues in Ukraine, the crisis that's happening in the Middle East, Sudan, and just the children and families in the millions who've been displaced, who've lost their homes, who are trying to rebuild their lives, oftentimes carrying what they can on their backs. And so it's a really difficult, challenging season for so many. And I think what puts this in perspective, and I'm happy to share more about this, Di, from my recent travels, is obviously we're worried about the safety of children and families, meeting their immediate needs, and we're working in all of those crises that I mentioned. But we're also really concerned about the long-term impacts and the psychological impacts that this kind of thing will have for children at these formative years of their lives.
Hunger is a big thing as well, isn't it? Just hearing about, the many challenges around this. Can you tell us a little bit more about what people are facing?
Yeah, so children and families in these circumstances die. They, like I say, they've had to flee their homes. In many instances, they've had to flee their countries. They're fleeing from war or violence or conflict. And in a lot of these instances, these millions of people are almost completely reliant on food assistance. So that's food assistance that organizations like World Vision and others provide that meets their daily needs. They might get a monthly stipend of food, and it's what they're surviving on in refugee camps. I saw this again for myself firsthand recently on this trip where I was back in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. This will kind of give you the picture of the short and long-term impact. So I visited Cox's Bazar years ago, more right after the conflict and the crisis in Myanmar, where 1 million Rohingya refugees fled and entered the refugee camps in Bangladesh. And now, 8 years on, they're still completely reliant on humanitarian assistance. They don't have formal legal status in the country. It's not safe for them to go back. And so children are essentially stuck with no right to education or formal education, no right for their parents for formal employment, and reliant on monthly food stipends to survive. And so it's really difficult, really challenging. And the long-term impacts of these conflicts, it's not just what happens today, but it's what's going to happen in the months and the years to come. But to give a little bit of a hope, to give a little glimpse that there is light even in some of the darkest places. I was in these camps visiting a child-friendly space. So World Vision, in partnership with others, in the midst of this busy, hectic, bustling, chaotic camp, sets up these kind of safe spaces, places of kind of light and hope in the midst of real challenging circumstance, places where children can come, where they can be free and safe, where they can play, where they can get an informal education. And I remember sitting down with these four young Rohingya refugee girls, ages 10, 11, or 12. And at first they were a little shy, but then we started to play a little game that they were playing. And it was a game I played from my childhood. I don't know where they got this game, but it was snakes and ladders.
Oh, of
And
course.
so, of course,
Awesome.
snakes and ladders, right? Cross customs, cultures, languages.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to play. You start rolling the dice, you go up the ladder or down the snake. And I'm exaggerating and I'm laughing. And pretty soon we were just having so much fun.
Mm.
And it's this reminder, Di, that even in the midst of some of the bleakest, most challenging circumstances, God is there hope is there, light is there. I think of John 15, where it says that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And I can tell you in that
Mm.
moment that shining a light there for those little girls and them shining a light for me, it makes all of our lights shine brighter. I really believe that when we see the divine spark, when we can understand and see the divine spark in others, especially in places where the world threatens to snuff that out, it lights our lives up and makes our lights shine a bit brighter as well. And one more story,
Oh, no,
if you let
please.
me.
Please, I love that
Yeah, one more
story.
story.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was encouraging. Taking you to a different place in Solomon Islands, and these remote islands couldn't be more different almost. But people are living on fishing or farming, no electricity, and still real challenges for them. And one story that really inspired me on that visit, which I hope will inspire the listeners here of Rhema, is of a young boy named John. Now, when I met John, he's now a youth leader. He's doing great community projects. He's leading a savings group in his community. But his story, which he shared with me, was one that had some real challenges, and kind of speaks to this. So he grew up in the village. Really challenging to get an education beyond primary school there. So he went to Honiara, the capital of Solomon Islands, for his high school. But he had to leave what he knew, leave his family, oldest of 8 kids, stayed with his uncle. But his uncle didn't really have an eye out for him. He didn't have much money. He kind of felt like an outcast at the school he was going to, fell in with the wrong crowd, and essentially, what left with such hope and promise kind of fell way off track.
Mm. Mm.
And he got in with the wrong crowd, got kicked out of school, eventually found himself, and he talked about how he couldn't even imagine he found himself here, like selling drugs, selling things in the streets of Honiara. Has a girl pregnant who won't marry him because he's until he changes his life. And he has this moment of clarity where he realizes this is not the life that God wants for him or he wants for himself.
Mm.
And he pulls himself together as best he can, and he returns back on a boat back to this remote village. But it's really picture like the prodigal son coming home, and feels like a disappointment, feels like he's let everybody down. But here's the thing, Di, he's still one of the most educated guys in his village. And his father and his girlfriend, now wife, are praying for him and encouraging him to step up, lead the youth leadership group, do some different things. Now, it's at this moment that World Vision comes into the community. And what people need to understand is World Vision can't come into that community, can't do what I'm going to tell you about if it's not for amazing Kiwis like your listeners here who make that possible. And so, with your help, we come into this community a couple of years ago, and we start a savings group where people can save money. We start a youth leadership group to do community projects. And John has this moment where he believes God's calling him out. He believes God's got something for him, and he's praying, God, open the door. His wife's been going to the savings group, and he just shows up one day. He just tags
Mm.
along. And the leader of the group left, and they all turned to John, who they know is educated, said, John, will you lead this group? And John kind of feels the stirring and steps up and into it. And what I can tell you now, a year or two on, is he's this amazing community leader. He's saved money through a piggery project, and he's rebuilding a house for his family and his dad. Like, think about this coming full circle, and like what he's doing. And he's leading the youth in the community. They don't have latrines or good sanitation. And so, as a community project, they are making toilets, building toilets for everybody in the village. And they've done 56 of 78 already. And
Mm.
so, it just kind of speaks to the transformation and impact where when people come together, when God obviously wants to give people a second shot when they take it, and that we get to be a part of transformative stories like that one in places like the Solomon Islands, in moments like that in a Rohingya refugee camp, and around the world in some of these really challenging conflicts. And so, while it's very difficult out there, the world can be a harsh and challenging place. We get to be a part of bringing hope, bringing transformation, bringing light. And in doing that, I think our lives and our light shines a little brighter too. So that's just a little bit of some sharing, Di, around
Yeah.
some of the travels recently.
I'm excited to hear those stories because I don't think we hear them enough. Just to know that,
Mm,
you know, continuing throughout the world are these little spots of hope, life, and laughter that you're talking about.
mm,
Now, of course, people can get involved with the work of World Vision, particularly at this time of year, Christmas. You've got
mm.
some ways that people can help out. How do they do so?
This is an awesome time to reach out and get involved. I mean, as you say, everybody's looking forward to Christmas. I was
Yeah.
just talking about this with my family the other day, and my younger son had this idea of doing Secret Santa, which is great. And it's everybody's going to buy a gift
Mm.
for somebody else in the family, $50 or less. And I was just trying to think, like, what can I get my wife, or what do I want? Like, he's trying to get ideas. What do I want? And I'm like, well, I kind of have everything I need for $50 or less. And then it hit me, Di, the gift catalog for
Mm.
$45, you could buy somebody a chicken, for $12 actually a chicken. I'm exaggerating. Chickens aren't even that expensive. You could get four of those for $50.
Yeah, awesome.
You can help somebody to have clean water for as little as $45. And so I was just thinking with my family, that's definitely what I'm going to tell them. That is probably the best gift that I could receive is to help somebody else. And so I just encourage Kiwis as they're looking at their Christmas shopping, they're thinking about their families, they're thinking about the stories that I'm sharing. There's an awesome way for you to get involved right now, and that's checking out the World Vision gift catalog. I think some of the most meaningful gifts you can give, and being a part of stories like the one that I'm sharing. So if you go to worldvision.org.nz/gifts, worldvision.org.nz/gifts, you'll see all sorts of all sorts of gifts. And hey, we'd love to see you involved and being a part of this amazing story.
TJ, just want to say a very Merry Christmas to you and your family. I do hope you're getting a bit of a break as we end off the year and we're heading into what looks like to be a lovely summer. But also just want to say a huge thank you to the work that you and everyone does at World Vision. We so appreciate that here at Rhema, and I know our audience does too.
Hey, blessings to you and everybody over the Christmas holidays. Di, wonderful to talk to you and to all the Rhema listeners.
Thanks for joining us on Rhema. Now, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel with the subscribe button. This really helps us to continue to produce more quality content for you. And hey, if you'd like to stay updated and never miss any of our future videos, ring that notification bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on our other socials, which are in the description below. And until then, stay tuned.